Daniel D. Hearl, 2620 Ryan Street, Georgetown, SC. Before Pearl Harbor, I grew up on a farm close to the Bucksport, South Carolina community, and I was attending high school in Conway when Pearl Harbor happened. And I remember very good President Roosevelt coming over to speakers and telling us about the Japanese attacking and what we were going to do. We were declared war and we were going to prepare to fight them and win. Well, that was when I was a senior, so it wasn't long till after I graduated from Conway. The government had a training program in Florence on how to build ships. I completed that and transferred to Savannah, Georgia. And there I finished training and then went to work in the Southeastern Shipbuilding Corporation, making victory ships or liberty ships, whichever one you want to call them. Well, after I worked there about a year or so, I was classified 1A. So I knew the way people were being drafted, it wouldn't be long. So I decided I would take a few days and kind of enjoy myself before I went in service. Okay, then I went home, and I had an uncle living in Jamestown, South Carolina, which is across from, you know, the bridge over here, not too far from Andrews. And there, I was talking to my uncle, and he introduced me to the young black-headed lady. And I saw that black-headed lady, and I thought, you know, she might make me a good wife, because I had so many kin people at Bucksport, it was hard to find anybody. So anyway, we started getting acquainted, and it wasn't long before I was drafted, and I went to the board in Conway, and then went to Columbia, and they accepted me and swore me in, asked me which branch of service I wanted, and I told them Navy, and they gave it to me. The guy ahead of me, he wanted Navy, but he got Army, but I got Navy. So I went home for about 7 days, and then they called me back on active duty, and I went by train to Great Lakes, Illinois. And I'd never been very far out of Bucksport, up in the edge of North Carolina with my daddy to sell tobacco, but that's about the height of it. So I went through Kentucky, and I thought those were the marvelous little hills. I said, it looks like somebody just stacked one side the other. So I went to Great Lakes, Illinois to take my basic training. Okay, I completed that, as I recall, maybe in December. And I was given so many days to report to Norfolk, Virginia, and so many days travel time. And of course, when I came home, naturally I went to Jamestown to see. My mother wanted me to stay all the time with her, but I didn't stay there. I went over to Jamestown some and so forth. And then I reported back to Norfolk, Virginia, and we took training for close to a month, I guess. And then they decided to assign us to a ship. So a bunch of us were assigned to USS Moale, which was to be commissioned in Brooklyn Navy Yard. So then they transferred me to Brooklyn Navy Yard, and I got there about the 27th of February and went on board the ship when it was commissioned on the 28th of February. All right, for a long period of time, we did training. Well, first of all, though, in just a few days, we took a shakedown cruise to Bermuda, and we did some training there. And then we came back, and they decided they needed to make alterations to the ship. And they made different alterations, and finally, after several months' time, we were prepared, they thought, to send us to the battlefront. So we escorted some ships down to Trinidad to, well, for some, I guess they were going to go to the war zone too, I'm assuming. I don't remember for sure. But anyway, then we went through the Panama Canal, and what a lovely sight when you get on one of those locks and they flood it and you go up, and then you go the other side, you go down. And we reported to San Pedro, California. So at San Pedro, California, they gave us a little time off to look around, go to Hollywood. And I went to Hollywood and I saw Gene Autry's program. I saw the Great Gildersleeve. I went to the big band El Capitan Theater and the Brown Derby. and I went down to Lane, I guess they call it Hollywood Lane, where they had all those places where the stars had made different things. All right, then after so many days, we got orders to go to Pearl Harbor. Well, it just so happened, when we left there, we escorted 3 Victory Liberty ships to Pearl Harbor, which is the kind I had worked on. So we went to Pearl Harbor and we mingled with the fleet and tried to work together with all the fleet and how to work together as a team for a battle, and all kinds of training we went through. All right, then after a while, and so many days, weeks, we escorted the USS North Carolina to the battlefront, which we went to the battlefront. Well, we actually, before then, we went to some different islands, Anti-Weetock, Ulithi, and different places, and crossed the international date line. And from there, first we went on some carrier strikes on Manila. And then we went to Leyte, and we were assigned there to help protect that place that had already been invaded. Okay, every morning they would cut loose the smoke from the ships, because we had what we decided to call Washing Machine Charlie. About every morning before daylight, he'd come there and he'd do his little dive bombing, but he never did hit anybody because we had them covered with the smoke. Then a few days later, they got word on the other side of Leyte Island that the Japanese were trying to reinforce their troops on Leyte Island in Ormoc Bay. And what happens? We were, by the way, we'd gotten in company with our ship that we were made after, the USS Sumter and the USS Cooper and the USS Moale. They picked us 3 ships because we were the ship, when we made them, they were called super destroyers. They were the first of their kind. And they picked us to slip around that island and go in there and see what we could do about destroying the Japs. Well, it wasn't long before we got around to the other side, close to Ormoc Bay, we started getting attacked. I believe somebody must have told them. You could think so anyway. And we went there, and you talk about a sight. We went down Ormoc Bay, and bullets were coming to us from every direction, some short and some going over. You know, they had these tracer bullets. And then the ship started coming out, shooting at us and one thing and another. And the ship right ahead of us, the USS Cooper, took a torpedo right amidship. And it went down, you know how they go down just midship. And we started circling around again, and the destroyer came out to us, and we blasted him out the water. And some PT boats and different kind of ships we destroyed, and planes that particular time. And our captain, I think he was a little happy, Victor happy, he wanted stars or something. Anyway, he started to go again. And I said, oh Lord, this is the last of me. I'll never see home no more after all this. But about that time, they got orders for us to get out of there. Well, we started getting out of there all right, and just as we got out of there a little ways, here comes some Japanese planes. And then the wake of the water had so much phosphorus in that area till they could follow the wake of our ship. And they followed that and strafed us. And there were people all around me laying down and all over the ship, and the ship was burning too with these phosphorus shells that they strafed. But I didn't get hit, thank the Lord. And there were, I forgot how many, but I think about 25 injured, and so many of them died, 3 or 4, something like that. But they kept attacking us, so we got all the way back to Leyte Gulf again in that morning. So from that, I believe we got assigned to a fleet that went back to attacking Manila again with carrier strikes. And one time we was under Bull Halsey, another time we was under Admiral Nimitz. So, and a lot of time there would be different things. Yet in the meantime, when we were not doing anything, you know, we were escorting those big ships. The destroyers were the outer warning system, and with our radar and so forth. And then we would go ahead sometimes and picket duty and so forth. But anyway, then they finally landed, and I may not be getting this in exact order either. They landed troops in Lingayen Gulf, and we backed up that landing. But if I remember right now, and backing up prior to that, we went to another island, Mindoro Island, and landed troops on that island. Well, back during that time, the kamikaze planes really started getting hot. So we went to Mindoro for the landing, and here come some kamikaze planes, and they came in, and we helped destroy some of them. But about that time, there was a little hilly island to the left, and about 10 kamikaze planes come in. Well, they decided they were going to attack the LSTs because they had all the supplies. Well, the gunners shot down about 8 of them, and then another one hit an LST, and another one started for us, and we, about 200 yards from the ship, we got him in the ocean, got rid of him. But this plane that had hit the LST, we started pulling close to the LST, to give them some spray water to try to put the fire out. Well, the captain of the LST told us to get away because those fires were close to the big bombs and things. Well, about the time we started to pull away, that ship blew up and just blowed us apart. Well, we had a topside people, which I was on the top side on a 20mm gun. They knocked us to the deck with all that force, and about 10 more men, I believe, was injured, and of course all this shrapnel and damages on the part of the ship. But it wasn't enough to put us out of duty. So we went back into port from there, and whatever necessary was that we needed to do. And then after then, we started, and like I said, this may not be in chronological order, but after then we started sending planes and ships close to Japan to start bombing Tokyo. Well, we were in the carrier strikes on Tokyo for a time or two, and then one day we decided they wanted us to go, or we didn't decide, they decided they wanted us to go and take picket duty. Well, we went to take picket duty ahead of the fleet, and lo and behold, here come 2 40-foot waves. And they hit our ship and just damaged it so in the front part and put guns out of where they were not operable. And so we had to go back to Pearl Harbor to get repaired. And we went back to Pearl Harbor for about 9 weeks to get repaired. And there, while we were at Pearl Harbor, we changed commanders from Commander Foster to Commander Lyons. And that's where that picture is that I showed your friend out front. And then after we got through with that, we reported back to the line of duty, and we went into Iwo Jima and helped to land on the landing there. And in the meantime, we did other things. We might have went back for some more bombing of Tokyo, different things. And then after that, Okinawa came along, and we were in on the landing in Okinawa, and that was a sight to behold. The kamikaze planes were so thick they'd come in early in the morning, download and try to get to the ships, or they'd come high and die for one. Well, they wanted to get among the fleet, because if you got among the fleet, that shooting that plane, you'll all be hitting some other. You have to be very careful, you know, not to hit another ship. So I saw plenty of those, and then we would have to go out on picket duty. Okay, we went out on picket duty between there and Japan several times, but we were lucky. The times we went, very few planes came in our combat air patrol. Mostly took care of them with our help. But some of the other ships went there, and they'd send 20 and 30 planes at a time and to lam into those destroyers, and if they could get in the fleet, like I said earlier, when they came in, they'd try to get to a carrier or something like that. Well, you know, when you stay in that stuff long enough, you kind of get to the place you want to be, make a little joke out of things. So we'd see a kamikaze plane come in, hit a battleship, and he'd bounce off the deck and go into the water. So we'd say, like the boats and sweepers, man your brooms, clean sweep down fore and aft. That kind of break the monotony, you know. So when we did that a while, and they got far enough with Okinawa, then we went with a task force of minesweepers to sweep the sea between Okinawa and Japan, because we were really getting ready to invade Japan. And then on, and I know I've missed a lot of it, but then on August the 20th, 1945 is when Japan, we got word, a first word that they were trying to seek ways to make peace. Of course, that wasn't signed until 2nd of September. But you talk about a bunch of sailors and how they hooped and hollered and they played music over it. Of course, we used to listen to Tokyo Rose all the time. She'd tell us how lonesome we were from being away from home, you know. But anyway, that was a vicious, I'm not a vicious, but a really exciting night that we had. But then life had to go on. We started going then on the other side of Okinawa and patrolling while they were getting ready, MacArthur and them to go ashore, and they finally signed the peace treaty. And we patrolled there about 3 weeks before they gave us an opportunity to go into Yokohama, Yokosuka Naval Base and see all those ships were destroyed. And they even let us go ashore for a while. You had to be so many fellas to go ashore. So we went ashore. All right, when we got ashore, them Japanese would gather around you in big crowds. You know, they'd just been suicide people. And if you don't think would make you think about that, you got another thought coming. But when you get ready to go, they'd make a little path and you just walk right out of it. So we started destruction, Tokyo, and all of that. And then we went to Tokyo and reported back to some island. I don't remember if it was Leyte or where, one of those places. And finally we got instructions after it was all over and they'd secured everything that we could start going back to the States. So we took a group of fellas and went by Guam for certain things and picked up some old men, or everybody that we could put on the ship to take back to the States. Well, we had a nice journey, of course, back to the States. We landed in Astoria, Oregon. They were going to Longview, Washington for observance of a Navy Day. Okay, at Astoria, Oregon, they let part of the crew go home on leave. And I was one of those that went home on the first one. And I got home, and of course, I went over to Jamestown a good bit of the time, much to my mother's fussing. And about after several days over there, my wife, she became 18 years old on the 4th of November. Well, a few days later, on about the 16th, this is a real good way to propose, I guess. I said, let's get married. She said, why, sure, if you'll go and ask my father. So I had to go and ask her father, and he gave me all that stuff about if I didn't take care of her, you know, so, and if I made the bed hard. So then we went to Monk's Corner and just had a magistrate get us married, and from there, after so many days, I had to report back to the ship in Long Beach, California. And at that time, a directive came out, if you had so many points, you would not have to go back overseas. Our ship was going back overseas to test the atom bomb. But I transferred to San Pedro again, or San Pedro. And from there, they issued me orders to go to Charleston, South Carolina. And boy, we got us a house to live in then. And I had so many days to report to that. And but when I got there, I didn't get discharged. I was a yeoman. So therefore, they wanted people to help doing the paperwork and discharging other people. So I stayed there about 4 months doing that before they finally discharged me on June the 7th, 1946. That's the end of the war story. Whenever I was discharged from the Navy, I came back, stayed in Georgetown a little while, and then I went to Bucksport and stayed with my father a while. And I finally got a job with International Paper Company. And I worked for them for 38 years and 4 months. And I worked as in the accounting department because that's the line of work I'd done, and that's the kind of work I'd done in the Navy. So I ended up working in accounting with Bud Black and different times, L.C. Sloan, different ones. And till one day they came into me and told me they had an opening for a office manager in Greenwood, South Carolina. At that time they owned some flakeboard plants. So we went to Greenwood, and oh, I loved it up there. But it's sort of like it is now. The housing project went down the drain, and we had to close the plant. But lucky, Woodlands over there offered me a job back in the Woodlands Accounting Department. So I came back to Woodlands Accounting Department and worked with LC and Julius Emmon and other people at that time. And then they were cutting back on the crews, and they offered me a package. And I took my calculator for lots of days and calculated and checked and one thing and another. And I finally decided I'd make it because I was only 59 years old. So I took the package and run. And that was my end of my career with International. Ever since then, what we were able to, we traveled and had lots of fun until we got to the place now we can't do much of traveling. But we had a good life after that. 1985, I believe, is when, January 1st is when I really officially retired. Ormoc Bay, that was one of the biggest ones, and at Mendora, we invaded where that ship exploded. That was the worst time we had, and I thought sure we were done, especially in Ormoc Bay. I thought we were a goner in that time. But other times, whenever we were helping them bombard, land before the landings, you'd be pulled up stationary almost, and you'd be shooting at targets, and all of a sudden one explode right close to you. Well, we had them to explode on either side of us, but the only thing that we had to know anything about was some of the shells exploded. Now some of it came up on deck, hot pieces of shells and things like that, but that's about it. And incidentally, in the Ormoc Bay, I didn't mention that, they found later that a bomb, or not a bomb, but a gun, either 3 or 5 inch, it hit the fantail, and that's where I was, but it didn't explode. But you'd be, smelling flesh burning with them phosphorus shells. That killed my appetite for a while, I'll be honest with you. That LST 738, when it sunk, we picked up 73 Army people and 28 Navy personnel. Well, of course, I didn't know it being 17 years old, but I felt like we ought to get them somehow or another. And of course, I was entirely willing to go serve my time when they would call me. I was glad to serve my country, proud to serve my country. Still am. They were not against us fighting the Japanese, and they didn't have any protests. They backed anything that we could do to help get ready to fight them, including working wherever they could in factories and so forth. Anytime you went on picket duty, you was out front of the rest of the fleet. The destroyers normally were the outer edge of the fleet to protect them in case of submarines that get sonar sounds or anything they pick up on their radar for planes. And when you were sent out front, you were between the fleet and some other place so that you could get an early warning of anything was coming. And that's what the main thing was between Okinawa and Japan when they sent so many kamikaze planes there. We were there to pick up anything and let them know it was coming, like airplanes, particularly, especially in the kamikaze type thing. This shadow box was made for me by my grandson, Jason Hearl, for Christmas last year. He took all the information from me about my medals and so forth, because my old medals, they were not fit. He had to order new ones and to make this box. And included in that, he got that picture of me in Norfolk in March of 44. And he's got the picture of the ship, and he's got the name of the ship, and he's got the thing about the victory, I believe, here or something. And then he's got my medals, and I believe that's about all he's got in there. But he did that and did a fantastic job.